Hey everyone, and welcome. In today's video I wanted to explain what a 51% attack is, how it works, what it can do, what it can't do, and then some of the ways that you can protect yourself. So a 51% attack is basically a form of attack on a blockchain network that can lead to some inefficiencies. It can lead to stolen funds, the double spending problem, a variety of things. But before I get into that, we need to take just a quick step back and understand how a blockchain network works in general. So I have videos talking about how proof of work and proof of stake works and how that leads to network security. But basically the simple explanation is that when a transaction is made, it is put into a group of transactions known as a block. Now, before that block is added to the blockchain, miners basically solve a very intense mathematical puzzle. Whoever solves it first is able to add their block to the blockchain. It is confirmed by the network, and then we keep going, adding more blocks to the blockchain. What happens with a 51% attack? Well, before I get into the 51% attack, normally all of these different computers are operating independently. And when they add a block, maybe I add one block, maybe someone in India adds the next block, maybe someone in Japan adds the next block, and this helps maintain the system keeping honest because we're all competing against each other, but we're competing following the same set of rules. So there's an incentive to act honest. But when a 51% attack occurs, basically what can happen, one individual or group of individuals will control more than 50% of the mining power on the network. And because they have that monopoly on the mining power, they can kind of use the network for their own purposes. So some of the things that they can do, and one of the most common things is that they will basically create two separate blockchains. So normally, remember how I told you that we're adding blocks, we're adding transactions, and the blockchain's just kind of going along in a linear fashion. With a 51% attack, what they'll do is they will start mining and they will get the solutions to these blocks. However, they will not broadcast their solutions to the other miners. So kind of think of it as them getting the block rewards, but they're keeping it a secret, okay? Now, when they're keeping these rewards a secret, they're doing two things. Number one, they are earning rewards, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to also add as many blocks as possible to kind of their secret blockchain. And again, I'll explain why that matters in just a little bit. But basically, they'll earn these rewards and then they will spend them on the original blockchain, right? The honest blockchain where everyone's following the same rules. They will spend them, right? So let's say I get 5 Bitcoins as a reward and I go and I spend them, and you're thinking, okay, I have these Bitcoins in my wallet. I just gave someone a new house for 5 Bitcoin, right? Well, here's the thing. At some point, that secret blockchain becomes because they're adding blocks, they can add blocks to that secret blockchain faster than the other miners can add blocks to the legitimate blockchain. So what happens in the blockchain world, there's something known as the longest chain wins. So because these hackers or attackers have been able to add more blocks, when this illegitimate chain is discovered, it is actually the longest chain because they've been able to add blocks faster, so they are the longest chain. Now what happens is all of those transactions that were made on the good, honest chain, once the miners see, oh, this illegitimate chain is actually the longest chain, all of that becomes the new chain. So even though it's the illegitimate chain, it becomes the official chain at that point. So all of those transactions, remember when I said 5 Bitcoin for a house? Those transactions don't exist on that kind of illegitimate chain, which is now the official chain. So essentially these people got that house for 5 Bitcoins, but it's still showing in their wallet that they're going to have those 5 Bitcoin. And that is basically known as a double spend. So that's one possible drawback of a 51% attack. There are others. So if I have the monopoly on mining, I can prevent other blocks from getting confirmed. I can prevent other miners from mining. But one of the most kind of the significant effects of that is kind of the double spending problem. So obviously it enriches the attackers because they can spend the same money twice, but it also defrauds the people, right? So if you win and you gave someone your house for those 5 Bitcoin, you've given up a real world asset, right? So that's one of the reasons why if you go to deposit cryptocurrency on Nexo or something like that, they will make you wait so many confirmations before it's shown in your account. And I'll get into why that matters in just a minute. So 51% attacks are bad. How common are they? Well, the good news is that 51% attacks actually aren't that common, especially when we start talking about well-respected, well-established cryptocurrency chains. So two things I want to show you here. This is a distribution of the Bitcoin hash rate. And what this shows you is that different mining pools control various amounts of the hash rate. So remember, for a 51% attack, we need more than 50% of the hashing power. And even if we added up the two largest pools here, you could see that they're still less than 51%. So we would have to take three separate actors, and not just any three, but literally the three biggest actors, combine them to get to this stage, right? The more people you start trying to involve in a conspiracy, the harder it gets. People start talking. It's harder the more you have to do. So when a mining pool is decentralized and diversified like that, that's what we really want, because the more participants there are, the more secure it is. However, it's also extremely costly to attack a blockchain network. So what we have here is the cost to 51% attack various networks. And you'll see that Bitcoin would cost about $716,000 for a 1-hour attack. Ethereum would be about $418,000. Now, not only is it incredibly expensive to create these attacks, but it simply might not be able to get enough computing power, because you can't simply buy the network. You have to get the computing power. And NiceHash is a website where you can rent hashing power. So people will lease out their hashing power. And what we can see here is that NiceHash, even if you rented out all of the available hashing power, would be able to provide 0% of the power necessary to 51% attack the Bitcoin network. They would only be able to provide 3% necessary to 51% attack the Ethereum network. So the point that I'm trying to drive home is that attacking these networks, especially the more well-established ones, is not only expensive, but could prove very, very, very difficult, because you would have to gather so many different people and convince them to all attack at the same time, which would kind of go against their own economic best interest, because the way blockchains are set up, there's an incentive to act honestly, right? So if I 51% attack the network, it's going to cost a lot of money, a lot of resources, and then as soon as people learn about the attack, they're going to want to sell their coins. So the value of those coins that I get from the attack is going to go down. So that's one thing. Now, what can you do to protect yourself? Well, there's a few things, and again, I understand people that are new in crypto can be worried about some of this stuff, but I kind of want to put this in perspective. Most of the attacks that happen are attacks on smaller chains, right? So Verge is a cryptocurrency that was hacked at some point, or 51% attacked. Ethereum Classic. Now, what I want to point out, again, looking at this chart here, this 51% attack cost. If we look at Bitcoin, it's unreasonable to attack it because it costs so much. You would have to get so many different sources. But as we keep going down, we see things such as Raven Coin, right? We see things such as Moon Coin. We see down here Quark Chain. It costs $25 to rent all the hashing power necessarily to 51% attack that chain. If we go down here to smaller things like Bitcoin Rhodium, Castillo, BitTube Cash, we see that the smaller a chain is, the easier it is to be attacked. So, with that being said, one thing, there's an incredible security with operating on those bigger chains, such as your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, right? And even if we're talking about things such as Bitcoin Cash, right? Still, costs a considerable amount to attack it, and NiceHash wouldn't be able to provide all that hashing power. So, the more well-established the chain is, the more resistant it is to these 51% attacks. Now, remember, just because a chain is 51% attacked, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose all your money. A 51% attack does affect the network, but it's not a God code, right? It's not an all-powerful cheat code. So some of the things that a 51% attack can do, like I said, it can prevent miners from adding legitimate blocks. It can prevent transactions from being confirmed. However, it is extremely, extremely, extremely difficult for them to go back and reverse previous blocks, right? So let's suppose that 5 blocks ago, someone sent me $1,000 worth of Bitcoin Cash, right? As 5 blocks later, there's a 51% attack. It would be incredibly hard for them to go back and reverse those 5 blocks. It would be even harder to go back and reverse 20 blocks, 30 blocks. So the more distant in the past a transaction is, the more you're secure, which is, again, one of those reasons why if you are, Nexo, or if you are Coinbase, you're going to have people wait a certain amount of confirmations before you credit that crypto to their account. As a merchant, as someone that perhaps sells something in crypto, you probably would want to protect yourself by, as soon as the funds hit your wallet, you might not spend them or give the person their thing immediately, right? You would want to wait for some certain number of confirmations, just so that in the rare event of a 51% attack did occur, you could be pretty well assured that the actual funds that you got would not be part of that attack, would not be part of that reverse transaction. So confirmation periods and operating on a well-established blockchain are two things that are critically important that you can do to protect yourself. Also, I do want to put the risk in perspective. Like I said, smaller chains are typically the ones that get attacked. And even then, it's not that frequent. It's not that often. When it does happen, it makes news. And you have to think there's thousands of different cryptocurrencies. And the very few that you do hear of getting 51% attacked are kind of the outliers. That's why they're newsworthy, right? So again, like I said, these smaller things like the Ethereum Classic, Verge, things like that. And kind of to put things in perspective, when we hear of cryptocurrency hacks or attacks, it can be easy to kind of conflate everything together. The vast majority of ways that people lose their cryptocurrency are not through underlying weakness of the blockchain itself. It's what I call operator error. So, personal story for me, I was driving my motorcycle and it turned into a complete downpour. My cell phone died, my wallet that was on there got destroyed, and me being a beginner did not back up my seed phrase, so that cryptocurrency was gone forever. People that will fall victim to a Bitcoin scam. Hey, we have your personal information, send us 0.1 Bitcoin if you don't want it to get leaked, right? That is not the same as a 51% attack. That is a different matter entirely. So it's important to separate kind of like scams. It's important to separate exchange hacks and kind of just neglect from actual attacks on the network. The actual Bitcoin network, extremely secure. Most of the other leading chains as well, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, things like that. Very secure networks. And one thing that I just do want to bring up before I close out this video, when you see all these smaller chains getting hacked, that is one reason why I really like this Polkadot protocol that I did a previous video about, because what it does, when a new chain starts, that's when it's most susceptible to being hacked, where it doesn't have a lot of hashing power behind it, where it's very new. So what Polkadot does is it allows these chains to kind of pool their security, and a small chain can enjoy the security and resistance to attack that's typically what we would be thought of as something that's more of a bigger network, right? So it can kind of enjoy more security than we would expect it to have for its size. So overall, obviously not financial advice. It's obviously important to do your own research, everything like that. But at the end of the day, a 51% attack is a situation in which malicious actors are able to gain a majority of the hashing power, stop transactions, kind of rearrange, create their own blocks, initiate a double spending kind of attack. It is something serious, it is something to be aware of, but at the same time, it's relatively uncommon, especially on these bigger chains, and there are some basic steps you can do to protect yourself. As always, I appreciate you watching the video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.